Okay, first of all, let me just say that no, this is not one of those Goku was really the villain all along type videos. I'll be taking a look at Dragon Ball's most prolific villains and seeing which of them is the worst of the worst, whether it's a planet-eating goat or a conniving god of destruction. But to find out who is the purest evil, first we have to figure out what evil actually is in the Dragon Ball universe. Firstly, I have to start by clarifying that yes, evil is relative. And while it seems like this may take a bit of wind out of the sails here, it actually adds a lot more depth into our topic today. The morality of our world and of the current Dragon Ball world are starkly different, and it's important to distinguish the two. For example, we, at least in the Western world, see good and evil a lot like Goku and the gang during Z, generally valuing life and autonomy. However, as things move into Super, we see a big change in the fundamentals of the series. As we learn more about gods and angels, we also learn that this multiverse, and the morality of this multiverse, is more about balance.
You see, things generally occur in pairs, and so for everything there exists a corresponding counterpart.
In Z and in our universe, nuking a planet into dust is bad. But in Super, we're introduced to the role of the destroyers, and that destruction is necessary. The Kais create and the destroyers destroy, and this keeps the universe in balance. Neither are evil, and maybe even neither are good, they simply act to keep nature moving on its intended course. And when something is intended, there has to be someone intending. That would be Grand Zeno, the creator, with whom we'll be basing most of our sense of good and evil from, seeing as this is his universe. Zeno is sort of like a more pure form of Goku, and with this we can see why Goku is portrayed as the pure of heart hero of Dragon Ball's story, which can sometimes lead to trouble but is usually played off.
You broke it. I did break it, yes.
This is literally mass destruction, but it's without intent and without malice, which is how we'll be defining innocence moving forward, going hand in hand with pure intentions, which will be the first of Zeno's values that we focus on, purity. Evil acts are evil actions. They require intent. A hurricane may destroy towns and a tsunami may destroy cities, but we can hardly call acts of nature evil. However, if there were a wizard summoning them with the intent to cause chaos and destruction, then we could call that evil. Along these lines, balance is very important to Zeno. Whether it's creation and destruction, or the balance between the universes themselves, balance is a core component of Zeno's philosophy. Actions that disrupt this balance are seen as very bad.
There's nothing here, you see. That's very bad.
A destroyer not doing his job, very bad.
Not doing your job is very bad.
A Kai intervening where he shouldn't, very bad.
Something this nasty should be cleaned up, right?
Yes, it should. I'll destroy it.
Zeno also highly values compassion. While at first it may seem like Zeno is uncaring and cruel the way he deletes entire universes, it's clear that he wants his creations to have compassion for one another, which is why we learn what we do at the end of the Tournament of Power.
They believed whichever warrior made it to the end would have enough virtue to show compassion for the other universes and prove the whole cosmos worthy of existence. A selfish wish would have been viewed as a damning indictment, and their majesties would have eliminated all of reality.
Zeno's promise to delete all of the universes had the final wish not been a selfless one shows that he would see selfishness as a failure to be compassionate to your fellow mortals. So selflessness, we'll call it compassion, equals good. But building on this example, we can actually divine more about Zeno's values and what constitutes good in modern Dragon Ball. Zeno gave the universes a chance to fight for their survival and to choose the outcome. In reality, there was only one real option when it came to survival, but he gave the winner a chance nonetheless. This reveals that Zeno also values autonomy and free will. Another example of this is the Kais, who get their role directly from Zeno, of course, as their creator, whose duty also is to watch and nurture. Kais are explicitly discouraged from interacting directly with mortals, allowing them to grow and change, succeed or fail on their own, something we learn a lot about during the Zamasu arc in Super, which you can learn more about here.
The role of the Supreme Kai and all other Kais is creation. We are not meant to have a direct hand in our creation's affairs if we can avoid it.
These together paint us a picture of Zeno and Dragon Ball's sense of good and evil. Built upon 4 pillars, Zeno sees good as a combination of pure intentions, balance, compassion, and a respect for autonomy. The most simple way of defining evil is as the absence of good, so going forward we'll be assessing our villains based on the absence of our 4 core characteristics and how they portray the antithesis of them. But more importantly, we'll be focusing on the knowledge and rejection of good as our foundation for evil. Let's start with an example.
Tea made by one pure of heart is unclouded, and always the most delicious to boot.
Thank you very much, Master.
The fact you can make this cup shows me your heart is where it needs to be.
Zamasu is one of the more interesting characters when it comes to discussing Dragon Ball's morality, so we'll use him as our first example to illustrate the paradigm of evil that we're working with. While it's not required to break all 4 pillars to be considered evil, the intentional rejection of good is. For example, Goku is as compassionate as they come, but he doesn't seem to care much for balance. However, he's not out intentionally attempting to disrupt it for selfish reasons. When it comes to pure intentions, we know for a fact that Zamasu has them. For a time, the tea he makes is clouded, showing turmoil within him. However, after rooting his convictions and settling into his own philosophy, the tea becomes clear and Zamasu's intentions are again pure.
They created and spread it with minds they shouldn't possess. How can we call ourselves gods if we watch this plight and do nothing to stop it?
His intention is to rid the world of evil. Hardly a nefarious goal, but it's his view of evil diverting from what he's been taught and his actions in pursuing his goal that lead him down the wrong path. Zamasu also initially shows compassion for mortals with a desire to end their cycle of violence.
With respect, I've observed more mortal dealings than I care to count. They thrive, quarrel, perish, all on an endless loop. And so it seems to me for them to keep doing this is the height of futility. What sense does it make for us to protect these flawed beings when they persistently repeat the same tragic mistakes? Would it not be more merciful on our part to put a halt to their hopeless cycles once and for all?
But yet again, his actions following divert from what Gosu has taught him is good. While he indeed has pure intentions, Zamasu outright rejects balance. He kills all of the other gods and tries to exterminate all mortals.
We had to keep the other gods from interfering here. I used your strength to kill every other Kai in this multiverse.
Even the act of intervening in and of itself when he's been told it's not his place is a rejection of the balance between the Kais and the Destroyers.
Only one among us is permitted to directly interfere with their kind. That's the Destroyer.
He also rejects autonomy by seeking to exterminate mortals without giving them their chance to change, as we see during his arc with the planet Bovary.
We'll watch them for another millennium or so. See how they progress.
What's the point? They'll never be civilized.
You never know.
I do know.
Zamasu has stepped outside of his role in the balance of the universe, and intentionally rejected the pillars of Zeno's philosophy, and so he's wiped out. He's a very complex antagonist, but we can see that it's his choice to reject Zeno's philosophy that makes him ultimately an evil character in Dragon Ball's universe. Using Raditz as a contrast to Zamasu, Raditz grew up with the Saiyan way of life ingrained in him. Fighting and killing was how the Saiyans stayed alive as a species. While Raditz clearly lacks compassion and deprives other species of their autonomy, he does so within the paradigm of the Saiyan race and what he's been taught growing up. Raditz initially held good intentions. He wanted to recruit his brother, Goku, and rebuild the Saiyans as a proud and powerful race. And as a mortal pre-super, he doesn't really have the same concept of balance that is valued later in the series. If you haven't yet learned about the importance of balance, acts that disrupt it can hardly be called evil, and this is why the intentions are so important. For example, a baby might take off all its clothes and run around ass naked in public, but you can't really call it harassment because obviously he doesn't know any better. When it comes to the affairs of gods and the multiverse, Raditz has just about the same knowledge as a baby. Now, does that mean Raditz is good? No, probably not. He's definitely still a bad guy and does some bad things, but is he evil in the same way Zamasu or some of the other villains we'll cover are? Also no. So now that we understand what makes a character truly evil, let's take a look at and compare the top 3 competitors, starting with As the final villain of Z, Kid Buu is portrayed as the embodiment of chaos, a nearly unstoppable force with a singular goal of destruction. Although originally Shin states that Bibidi created Buu, Toriyama clarifies later in a Q&A for the 2014 issue of Saikyo Jump that Buu has existed since time immemorial as a force of chaos, and over the years absorbed the evil of mortals. Having actually absorbed evil from mankind, it would seem like Buu fits the bill as the most evil character. But putting aside the fact that he's not actually the only character who's done that, Buu acts more as a natural disaster than an evil force. Buu is chaotic, childlike, and unstable. It doesn't seem at all like he actually thinks things through, he just destroys. And that destruction includes himself as well. When we see Buu destroying planets during Z, he destroys himself along with them, forcing him to regenerate before he moves on to the next planet. And this is what Buu does, mindlessly jump from planet to planet, destroying everything as he goes, like a universal storm. As far as good intentions go, Buu definitely has none, but he doesn't really seem to have many intentions at all, and he's barely even capable of speaking. So while Buu has no good intentions, he doesn't quite seem capable of having evil ones either. Though you can say he intends to destroy, it's more for destruction's sake than any malicious scheme. However, there is an argument that he's destroying for some selfish sense of fun, so that's worth noting as well. That said, Buu absolutely lacks all sense of compassion, destroying civilizations, planets, and even peaceful gods with obviously no thought or remorse. This extends also to autonomy, which he removes by destroying, often without even a word or a chance at a defense. Say what you want about Cell, but at least he gave the heroes a chance to fight for their survival with the Cell games. Kid Buu, upon first meeting, destroyed Earth without saying a single word. When it comes to balance, Buu doesn't necessarily outright reject it, but explicitly acts in direct contrast to it with his wanton destruction. He's a prime example of a being that is set for deletion by a destroyer due to his tipping the scales of balance, though because of Beerus being asleep at the time, the Supreme Kai had to take over the job. Again, it's just not the case that Buu is intelligent enough to know of and work to disrupt balance, and even if he did, it would be more that he didn't care than wanted to work against it out of spite. As far as bad deeds, Buu's don't extend much past mass destruction. He's destroyed countless planets and killed and absorbed many Kais, but his actions generally don't run down to a personal level where a lot of evil acts become more pronounced. Consider the difference between killing someone you have to look in the eyes versus pressing a button to drone strike the other side of the planet. The latter may be worse in terms of outcome, but the former is a more direct rejection of morality and devaluing of another being. You have to really intend to break the rules if the consequences are staring you right in the face. Take, for example, the environmental effects of driving your car to work every day versus walking to the park and dumping a few gallons of gasoline into the river yourself and watching the fish die. So Buu is definitely bad, but also lacks the intelligence required to reject morality in the way others like Zamasu do. Like Buu, Moro is a destroyer of worlds. His rap sheet includes wiping out entire civilizations, turning planets into barren wastelands devoid of life, and letting loose some of the galaxy's most heinous criminals. However, unlike Buu, Moro is incredibly intelligent. Over the course of his arc, we see Moro create and enact several schemes, most of which succeed, like his original plan to escape from prison and get his powers back. Moro knows what he's doing and says as much multiple times. He views the universe as fuel that he uses to increase his power and lifespan, a deeply ingrained selfishness that sees everyone else as tools to be used to achieve his own ends. We see this on full display a few times, namely when he uses the Frieza Force soldier to regain his powers and then backstabs him, as well as when he pumps power into Sagambo until his body can't take it anymore and he pops like a balloon. Clearly, Moro's compassion and respect for autonomy are next to nothing, and the key point is that we know it's intentional too. Moro is well aware of the gods, as we see during his battle with the Daikaio, and clearly rejects their sense of balance with his goal to drain every living being in the universe of their energy for his own benefit, extending also to the gods themselves. This differs from Buu because of his intelligent yet spiteful attitude against the Kais. He won't let anyone, even the gods, stand in the way of his ultimate goal. An important thing to note is that, again, unlike Buu, Moro often acts directly with individuals during his arc, showing us that his rejection of good is at times immediate, not out of sight and out of mind like Buu's were. Luckily, we get a front row seat to this when Goku offers him a chance to come along peacefully and return to prison, to which he proceeds to fuse with the planet and basically say, "F you, if I go, you're all coming with me." So Moro intentionally breaks all 4 pillars and rejects good entirely. He's purely selfish and intentionally evil, but while in my opinion this is the case for Moro, it's also worth mentioning that Moro bears striking resemblance to Darth Nihilus from the Knights of the Old Republic series. Both feed their life force by draining others, and both go on to drain entire planets at a time. While Nihilus clearly has some intelligence to him as he too plans and schemes, he is likened to an insatiable hunger. The more life force he drains, the more he needs to keep himself going, becoming more of a Boo-like force of nature, mindlessly draining mass amounts of energy to keep himself alive. We don't know much about Moro's race, but this could be similar with them as well. Moro probably wasn't always draining entire planets, but eventually gained strength and required more and more energy to be satisfied. However, the more likely story is that Moro realized how much energy he could accumulate, then grew hungry for the power and freedom that came with it. It's his pure intelligence and clear intention to cause distress that sets him apart from the Nihilus and Boo-esque lumbering forces of natural destruction, and is why Moro is truly evil. When it comes to villains, Frieza is the poster child. A completely selfish, mass-murdering warlord who seeks to enslave the entire multiverse. As far as breaches to autonomy go, enslaving entire races is about as direct a rejection as you can get. At their height, the Frieza Force owned about 70% of the universe, and I'm willing to bet based on how he treated the Saiyans that it wasn't a nice utopian democracy. Tag on the fact that Frieza has a habit of wiping out species for personal benefit, which we know is intentional by his recalling of all the Saiyans before destroying their planet, and you have a pretty strong argument for crossing respect for autonomy off our list. Again, it's worth mentioning that Frieza is highly intelligent and sophisticated.
Greetings, my name is Frieza. As you can no doubt surmise for yourselves, I'm quite the collector of Dragon Balls. So now, I've told you a little something about me. I expect you to repay the courtesy by telling us the whereabouts of your neighbors.
He definitely knows what he's doing, he definitely knows the rules, and we see him intentionally break them time and time again. There are countless scenes where his lack of compassion is on full display, including the Tournament of Power, where he spends the majority of his time singling out specific enemies to torture for extended periods.
Congratulations, my flightless friend. Now I'm going to make you my new plaything. Thank you for the entertainment.
No, Frieza, don't! He killed him!
As well as his training with Taguma, who he beats to the brink of death over and over every day for 4 months. He doesn't even care about his own family, as he denies the revival of his father, King Cold, just so he can rule uncontested.
And my father?
Our plan was to bring you back first, Lord Frieza, and then resurrect King Cold, as soon as we could make another wish.
No, I don't think we need to worry about reviving him. Father always was bloated with self-importance.
Frieza's end goal is complete control of the entire multiverse. During the Tournament of Power, Frieza sees the Grand Zeno twins directly and learns about their ways, something he again directly rejects, vowing to one day rule over the Zenos as well.
I find the disparity between their syrupy childlike voices and their astringent actions to be quite vexing. But hear me now. There will soon come a day when Emperor Frieza shall reign over you.
You won't find a much more explicit rejection of Zeno's philosophy than literally saying you plan to overthrow him. While it's clear that enslaving the universe and destroying planets just because you're grumpy is in direct contradiction to balance, Frieza did work under Beerus' orders for a time. While working within the cosmic system would lend credibility to Frieza's actions, let's be honest, Beerus has done his fair share of nuking planets because he's cranky, and we know that Beerus is a pretty bad destroyer and doesn't really follow Zeno's rules very closely.
You show great wisdom in scolding them, sire. Recently, Lord Beerus has become more interested in napping and eating than in destruction, I'm afraid.
So working under him isn't quite the safeguard it would normally be for, say, someone like Toppo under Belmod. Besides destroying planets and driving entire races to extinction, Frieza's interpersonal actions are just as nefarious, and this is where we start to see the real depths of Frieza's evil. Again, blowing up planets with a finger is one thing, but it takes a different kind of villain to, for example, brutally torture the son of a guy you hate in front of his friends and family.
Go on, try to escape. I enjoy a moving target.
He is, of course, willing to kill individuals on a personal level for his own gain. A great example of this is when he kills Broly's father, Paragus, just to enrage the Saiyan in his fight against Goku and Vegeta.
Broly, look! It's such a tragedy!
Don't ask why Goku didn't bother to revive him at the end. On a slightly larger scale, we can also look at when he wipes out his entire army just to flex his new power on Goku.
What's he thinking? Oh, no! The Frieza Force!
Did he really wipe out his entire army just to make a point?
Furthermore, after the Tournament of Power is over, with his own eternal damnation on the table, Frieza still refuses to express any remorse for his actions, saying he'll continue his wicked ways no matter what.
He said at the end of the tournament you performed most admirably.
Sure, that's wise, because I have no intention of changing my wicked ways.
Altogether, Frieza is pretty similar to Moro, but with a little torture and mass enslavement tacked on. This video focuses mainly on canon villains and events, but there's a large cast of non-canon characters that could definitely make the list. Janemba is basically a second Boo with a bit more emotional weight behind his actions. He imprisons the workers of Otherworld and sows chaos throughout the mortal realm. Though, like Boo, he's literally made of pure evil, he doesn't quite have the feats, we'll say, to keep up with the rest of the villains. Since he's out and dead within the span of a 50-minute movie, it's not clear if he even manages to kill a single person. Baby is a great one for this list, though he has a less selfish reason for his actions, seeing as his entire arc is based on getting revenge against the Saiyans for what they did to his homeworld. He also manages to enslave a large population, so in these ways I'd characterize him as kind of a Frieza light. His intentions aren't quite as selfish and nefarious, and his actions don't span quite as vast as Frieza's. Lastly, I'll mention Omega Shenron, another character born from pure evil, basically the antithesis of all the good that has come from the Dragon Balls throughout the series, namely the wish to revive the Namekians during the Frieza saga. He completely lacks compassion, killing even his own allies, and worst of all, he has no respect for the rules of Dragon Ball. He interrupts power-ups and fusions, doesn't let his opponents recover after being injured, and totally lacks the sense of challenge that the heroes have for fighting stronger opponents. A pretty bad dude all around, and probably a contender for the top of the list, but again, my video today is focusing on canon characters. I think it's safe to say that everyone on this list would be a real shame to meet alone in a dark alley, but I believe that Frieza stands at the top of the list as the most evil character in Dragon Ball fiction. Not only does he pull slightly ahead of Moro on a nefarious and Machiavellian scale, the sheer breadth of his actions along with his deep and twisted nature put him above the rest. As bad as Moro is, he has a goal. He wants to become strong, and he wants to devour the entire universe, and almost everything he does is in service to that goal. Besides allowing Goku and Vegeta to survive in order to feed on them again later, and maybe his actions with Sagambo, he doesn't display quite the same toying enjoyment that Frieza finds in torturing his victims. Where Moro does it to feed, Frieza does it purely for fun. On a cosmic scale, Moro and Boo have lived far longer than Frieza, and devoured and destroyed countless planets. On the other hand, Frieza has certainly done his fair share of mass destruction, meaning that sheer destruction isn't enough to put you at the top of the list. In my opinion, it's his intelligent disregard for the essence of good and the depth of his personal depravity that makes Frieza the most evil character in Dragon Ball.
You dare make me exert myself to put effort into a fight? Then I will teach you a lesson. Behold, this is Golden Frieza, the last